Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, I know I'm right, so why didn't they listen? Maybe your idea got ignored in a meeting. Maybe someone said, I'll think about it. And you knew that meant no. Maybe you tried to set a boundary, and somehow you ended up apologizing instead. Here's the truth. Persuasion isn't about being louder, smarter, or more aggressive. It's about using the right phrases at the right moment. Small wording shifts can completely change how people respond to you. In this video, you'll learn practical, ethical phrases that instantly make you more persuasive in almost any conversation. At work, with friends, in negotiations, or when setting boundaries. This isn't manipulation. This is psychological clarity. Let's build your influence blueprint. You explain your idea clearly. You even rehearse it beforehand. And still, the room moves on like you never spoke. Or someone tells you, I'll think about it. And you can already feel that soft rejection hiding inside that polite phrase. Or you try to set a boundary, calmly, respectfully, and somehow you end up saying, sorry, while shrinking your own position. If that's happened to you, here's what I want you to understand. This is not a confidence defect. It's not an intelligence problem. And it's not because you're bad with people. It's because most smart, capable adults were never taught how persuasion actually works. We were taught to be logical, to present facts, to explain ourselves clearly. But persuasion isn't just about clarity of information. It's about managing psychological resistance. Psychological resistance is the brain's instinct to protect autonomy, identity, and status when it feels pressure or threat. When someone feels pushed, corrected, exposed, or cornered, even subtly, their mind shifts from listening to defending. So the real skill of persuasion isn't overpowering someone. It's reducing resistance while increasing clarity. That's the frame for this entire video. You're going to learn a set of phrases rooted in well-established influence principles. Tactical empathy, showing people you understand their perspective before trying to change it. Calibrated questions, asking open-ended questions that shift problem-solving onto them. Framing and loss aversion, presenting ideas in ways that highlight risk and relevance. Commitment and consistency, aligning your message with what they already believe. Autonomy and reactance, removing pressure so they don't feel controlled. Social proof, using credible reference points to reduce uncertainty. And we're using them ethically. Influence is not manipulation. Manipulation hides intent. Ethical influence is transparent, mutually beneficial, and respectful. Over the next few parts, you'll see exactly how small wording shifts can change the emotional temperature of a conversation and make people far more likely to listen. If you want more people to actually listen when you speak, hit like, so this video reaches others who need these skills too. Now let's start with the first phrase that lowers defenses almost instantly. The first phrase that instantly makes you more persuasive is simple. It seems like. This comes from what negotiation expert Chris Voss calls tactical empathy, deliberately demonstrating that you understand someone else's perspective before trying to influence them. Tactical empathy doesn't mean agreeing. It means accurately acknowledging what the other person is thinking or feeling. One of the easiest ways to do this is through labeling. Labeling is when you name the other person's emotion or concern in a neutral way. For example, it seems like you're worried about the timeline. It sounds like you've had bad experiences with this before. It seems like this feels risky to you. Here's why this matters. People resist when they feel misunderstood. The moment someone feels judged, corrected, or dismissed, their brain shifts into defense mode. And defensive people don't collaborate, they protect. Compare these two responses in a work disagreement. Ineffective. You're overthinking this. The numbers clearly support it. Persuasive. It seems like you're concerned this could backfire if we move too fast. Notice the difference. One challenges identity, the other validates concern. Now add mirroring, another powerful tool. Mirroring simply means repeating the last 1 to 3 key words someone says, with curiosity. Them. I just don't think the team is ready. You. Not ready? That small repetition encourages them to expand. And when people expand, they feel heard. Let's put it into a quick dialogue. Colleague. This proposal feels risky. You. It seems like you're worried about what could go wrong. Colleague. Exactly. If it fails, it reflects badly on all of us. That, exactly, is gold. That's a sign defensiveness is dropping. When people feel understood, their nervous system relaxes. And when resistance lowers, influence rises. You're not pushing, you're aligning. That's the power of "it seems like." The second phrase shifts the dynamic completely. What would need to happen for you to feel comfortable with this? This is an example of a calibrated question, an open-ended question, usually starting with what or how, that guides the other person to think rather than react. Calibrated questions work because they invite collaboration instead of demanding compliance. Here's why this matters. Yes or no questions kill persuasion. Can you approve this? Will you agree to this? Is that okay? These questions corner people. And when someone feels cornered, the safest answer is often no, or I'll think about it. Now compare that to, what would need to happen for you to feel comfortable approving this? That question does 3 powerful things. First, it respects autonomy. Second, it assumes agreement is possible. Third, it shifts problem-solving onto them. This taps into what psychologists call the autonomy trigger. People are more likely to support decisions they feel they helped shape. Imagine you're negotiating for more responsibility at work. Ineffective. I deserve to lead this project. Persuasive. What would you need to see from me to feel confident giving me that responsibility? Now your manager isn't defending a decision. They're designing a path forward, or in collaboration, instead of, so are we doing this or not? Try. What concerns would we need to resolve before moving ahead? Tone matters here. This phrase only works if it's calm, curious, and neutral, not sarcastic or impatient. Your delivery should communicate partnership, not pressure. When you ask calibrated questions, you stop trying to win the argument. You start guiding the thinking. And persuasion becomes a shared process, not a tug of war. Comment persuasion if you believe influence should always stay ethical. The third phrase shifts you from confrontation to collaboration. Here's what I'm concerned about. To understand why this works, you need one key concept from behavioral science, popularized by Daniel Kahneman. Loss aversion. Loss aversion means people are more motivated to avoid losses than to pursue equivalent gains. In simple terms, we react more strongly to potential risk than to potential reward. Most disagreements escalate because they're framed as right versus wrong. Ineffective. That plan won't work. You're making a mistake. This is a bad idea. Those phrases attack judgment. And when you challenge someone's judgment, you trigger ego defense. Now compare that to, here's what I'm concerned might happen if we move forward this way. Notice the shift. You're not attacking the person. You're highlighting shared risk. You move from, you're wrong, to, let's protect ourselves. Imagine a project discussion at work. Ineffective. This timeline is unrealistic. Persuasive. Here's what I'm concerned about. If we compress the timeline this much, we may miss quality checks, and that could hurt the launch. Now you're not opposing the plan. You're safeguarding the outcome, or in a relationship boundary. Ineffective. You never respect my time. Persuasive. Here's what I'm concerned about. When plans change last minute, it makes it hard for me to trust our schedule. Again, you frame the issue as an impact, not an accusation. The key is calm neutrality. Your tone should communicate steadiness, not frustration. No sarcasm, no emotional spikes, just measured clarity. Why does this matter? Because emotional safety determines whether someone listens or defends. When people feel attacked, they protect themselves. When they feel protected, they engage. By framing your message around shared concern instead of personal criticism, you reduce resistance while increasing relevance. You're not escalating the conflict, you're lowering the temperature. And persuasion works best in a calm room. The next phrase might feel counterintuitive at first. You're absolutely right about. This connects to one of the most researched influence principles identified by Robert Cialdini: commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency means people prefer to act in ways that align with what they've already said, believed, or publicly supported. When you begin a conversation with disagreement, you create friction immediately. The other person feels challenged, and once they defend their position, they become psychologically invested in it. The more someone argues for a position, the more committed they feel to it. That's why starting with, "No, that's not true," or "You're wrong," is so expensive. It locks them into defense mode. Instead, you use strategic agreement. Strategic agreement means finding something, anything genuine, that you can align with before introducing your perspective. For example, ineffective: "You're being too critical of my work." Persuasive: "You're absolutely right that quality matters. I care about that too. That's why I wanted to walk through my reasoning on this part." Notice what happened. You didn't surrender your position. You created alignment first. Here's another example in a family disagreement. Ineffective: "You're overreacting." Persuasive: "You're absolutely right that this situation is stressful. Anyone would feel pressure here. What I'm trying to figure out is the best next step." That phrase acts as a bridge. The bridge technique works like this: agree with something true. Connect it to your perspective. Guide the conversation forward. When people hear agreement, their brain relaxes. They feel seen instead of opposed. And when they feel aligned with you on even one point, they're more open to hearing the next one. You're not manipulating. You're reducing unnecessary conflict. Strategic agreement creates psychological alignment before persuasion begins. And alignment always travels farther than argument. The next phrase lowers resistance almost instantly. It's completely your decision. This works because of a powerful psychological effect called reactance. Reactance is the instinct to resist when we feel our freedom of choice is being restricted. The moment someone feels pushed, even subtly, their brain shifts from evaluating the idea to protecting autonomy. That's when you hear things like, "I'll think about it." "Now's not a good time." "I'm not sure." Pressure backfires because it activates defense, not consideration. Let's compare. Ineffective: "You need to decide by today. This is the best option. You should just do it." "I really think this is the right move for you." Even if you're correct, the tone implies control. Now compare that to, "It's completely your decision. I just want to make sure you have all the information." That sentence restores autonomy. And when autonomy is restored, resistance decreases. Here's an example in a workplace proposal. Ineffective: "I think this strategy is clearly better. We should move forward." Persuasive: "It's completely your decision. If it helps, I can walk through why I believe this approach reduces long-term risk." You've removed pressure, but you haven't removed conviction. Or when setting a boundary, instead of, "You can't keep canceling last minute," try, "It's completely your decision how you manage your time. I just need to be clear that if plans change last minute, I'll need to step back." Calm, clear, no force. Now, this is important. This is not reverse psychology. You're not pretending not to care, so they'll comply. Ethical influence removes pressure because it respects choice. not because it's a trick. When people feel free, they think more clearly. When they feel controlled, they push back. So if you want to be more persuasive, stop tightening your grip. Give them space, and watch how often they lean forward instead of away. The next phrase uses one of the most powerful principles in influence science. Most people in your position tend to. This is based on social proof. The psychological tendency to look to others' behavior to decide what's appropriate or correct, especially in uncertain situations. When people feel uncertain, they don't just evaluate facts. They scan for cues. What are others doing? What's considered normal here? What do people like me usually choose? Uncertainty increases conformity because following others reduces perceived risk. Now, here's the difference in phrasing. Ineffective. Everyone is doing this. This is what people normally choose. Those statements are vague. They feel like pressure. And sometimes they trigger skepticism. Now compare that to, most people in your position tend to prioritize long-term stability over short-term savings. That's specific. It's contextual. It doesn't pressure. It informs. Imagine you're negotiating compensation. Ineffective. I think this salary is fair. Persuasive. Most professionals with similar responsibilities in this role tend to fall within this range. I'd like to explore something aligned with that level. You're not demanding. You're anchoring expectations to a credible reference point, or in a proposal. Most teams who've scaled successfully at this stage focused heavily on systems before expansion. Notice the tone. Calm, measured, no exaggeration. And here's the ethical line. Never fabricate social proof. If you invent consensus, you destroy trust the moment it's discovered. Ethical influence requires accuracy. If you don't have real data, don't imply that you do. You can also add subtle credibility, what we might call micro-authority phrasing. In my experience working on similar projects, what I've seen work repeatedly is that signals competence without arrogance. Social proof reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty fuels hesitation, and hesitation blocks decisions. When used honestly, this phrase helps people feel safer moving forward because they're not stepping into the unknown alone. Share this video with one friend or coworker who's smart but keeps getting talked over. The next phrase is deceptively simple. That's fair. Validation, in one sentence, means acknowledging that someone's perspective makes sense from their point of view, even if you don't agree with it. Validation is not surrender. It's emotional regulation in action. Here's why this matters. Arguing escalates because it signals threat. When someone feels opposed, their nervous system shifts into protection mode. Heart rate rises, tone sharpens, listening decreases, and once emotion rises, logic drops. Let's compare. Ineffective. That's not true. You're misunderstanding me. You're overreacting. Each of those phrases pours fuel on the fire. Now compare that to, that's fair. Then pause. The pause is critical. Silence creates space. It signals you're not rushing to defend yourself. It lowers intensity instead of matching it. Imagine a heated work conversation. Colleague, you dropped the ball on this deadline. You, ineffective. No, I didn't. You changed the requirements. That turns into escalation. Now try this. Colleague, you dropped the ball on this deadline. You. That's fair. Pause. I can see how it looked that way given the timeline shift. Notice what happened. You didn't accept blame you don't agree with. You acknowledged the perception. Here's another example in a relationship. Them. You haven't been present lately. You. That's fair. Pause. I've been distracted with work, and I can understand how that feels. Validation lowers emotional temperature, and when temperature drops, influence increases. Your emotional control becomes a persuasion multiplier. If you stay steady while others spike, You become the anchor in the conversation. And anchors attract attention. Remember, persuasion isn't about overpowering emotion. It's about stabilizing it. Share this video with one friend or coworker who's smart but keeps getting talked over. The next phrase strengthens your authority by slowing the conversation down. Let me make sure I understand. This is called the reflective summary technique, briefly restating the other person's position in your own words to confirm accuracy before responding. Most people listen to reply. Very few listen to understand. And when someone feels misunderstood, they repeat themselves, louder, more emotionally, more defensively. The goal here is to create what negotiation expert Chris Voss calls a "that's right" moment. The moment when the other person says, "Yes, that's exactly it." That phrase signals psychological alignment. Here's the contrast. Ineffective. I already know what you're saying. That's not the issue. Persuasive. Let me make sure I understand. You're saying the main concern isn't the cost. It's the long-term maintenance risk. Is that right? Now they clarify. And when they respond with, "Yes, that's right," something important happens. They feel heard. Clarity builds trust because it shows you're not rushing to dominate the conversation. You're working to accurately represent their thinking. Imagine a negotiation. Them. The budget is tight, and we can't justify expansion. You. Ineffective. But expansion is necessary. Or instead, let me make sure I understand. The hesitation isn't about growth itself. It's about cash flow stability this quarter. Is that accurate? Now you're not arguing against a straw man. You're responding to the real concern. In conflict resolution, this is even more powerful. You're feeling overlooked in these decisions, and that's been building for a while. Did I get that right? When someone feels accurately represented, defensiveness drops. And here's the paradox. Listening deeply increases perceived authority. People trust those who demonstrate understanding before asserting opinion. You don't gain influence by speaking more. You gain it by clarifying better. And when someone says, "That's right," you've earned the right to move the conversation forward. Now let's bring everything together into a real influence blueprint you can use immediately. Scenario 1. Workplace persuasion. Imagine you're proposing a new strategy in a meeting. Instead of pushing harder, you combine the phrases. First, it seems like there's concern about the rollout risk. Pause. Let them respond. Then, let me make sure I understand. The main issue is protecting this quarter's results. Is that right? Once you get alignment, you're absolutely right that stability matters. Now introduce framing. Here's what I'm concerned about. If we delay too long, we may lose momentum in the market. Then restore autonomy. It's completely your decision. What would need to happen for you to feel comfortable testing this on a smaller scale? Notice the flow. Empathy, clarity, agreement, framing, autonomy, calibrated question. That's influence without pressure. Scenario 2. Setting a confident boundary. Instead of, "You never respect my time," try, "It seems like last-minute changes feel minor to you." That's fair. Things come up. Here's what I'm concerned about. When plans shift suddenly, it affects my schedule. It's completely your decision. But if plans change last minute, I'll need to reschedule. Calm, clear, respectful, firm. Mini exercise. Take one sentence you usually say, like, "Can you please take this seriously?" Rewrite it using one of today's phrases. What would need to happen for this to feel like a priority? Practice that shift. 7-day influence challenge. For the next 7 days, use one phrase per day in a real conversation. Notice how tone changes. Notice how resistance lowers. Remember the blueprint. Empathy lowers resistance. Questions create ownership. Framing guides decisions. Autonomy reduces pushback. Validation builds trust. Social proof reduces uncertainty. And always, ethical influence only. transparency, mutual benefit, respect. Influence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and you're already building it.